for example, on one day, he would have to do maybe 3 700s on the road. Then the next day would go repeat 3 200s. So 3 sets of 3 200s right after one another. But I mean, obviously at incremental pace, would look at things like 500s on the track, into 400s, into I would say typically would average about 3,000 to 4,000 meters, touching 4,000 meters per, not per session, but per long session. The rest of the time it would be basically just recovery runs or run-throughs or whatever.
OB, brother, thank you for doing this, man.
Thank you for having me, Kia. Thank you for having me, Fernando.
Yeah, so we've, I can't remember when we first connected, but it's been a number of years now, right?
No, I think we connected, I think touch base, probably 2009-ish, actually communicated 2020, last year.
Yeah. So let's dive, right into it. We can get into the background and about your experience and stuff like that. But I'd say like the thing that you're most prominently known for is your work with Wayde Van Niekerk, being a part of his preparation to break a very long-standing 400-meter world record. What do you think went wrong in Tokyo? Because obviously the expectation would be, hey, if this guy's a world record holder, how does he not make the Olympic final a few years later as an outsider?
I think the short answer to that would honestly be undercooked. If I were to put it to one word, I would say undercooked for that event. Because if you track back to his season and his races before the actual event, a lot of his races were 200s. You know what I'm saying? And till this day, I don't know why he wasn't selected for the 200 by obviously the national body and everything. I don't know. Maybe they have their own reasons, but I feel like he would have been a better fit for the 2. Not to say that he's not into the 4 anymore. It's just that undercooked, not enough time with the new coach, new system. So it's a lot of variables that go into that.
Did he switch coaches prior to Tokyo? Because I know, is it Ans Botha was his coach before, and now he's in Florida, right?
Yeah, he's with Lance Brom in Florida. He switched back in March. Yeah, I think March 2021.
And one of the things that struck me, it was at 17. I remember he was playing is it a charity rugby game, and he tore his ACL. This was like the year after Rio, and you think, man, if this had never happened, because is it fair to say that he didn't really compete for 2 years after that ACL, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Tore the ACL in September of 2017, and he didn't compete 2018, tried to compete in 2019, 2020 happened, and then obviously we came into 2021. So he hadn't really competed since 2017, like obviously on a full scale level,
Yeah. So in your mind, if he doesn't tear his ACL, is he going to continue to improve beyond 16, or was it like the planets aligning?
I'm honestly going to guard and say boldly, 2018 probably would have been 9.7 over the 100. 2019 probably would have been 42. And I don't know about 2020. That would have been the next step from 42. You got what I'm saying? But 2018, 9.7 was there.
How did you come to work with him?
So we go back. I used to be a sprinter myself. So we used to be in the same sprint group back in 2012. Obviously I was the trash one and he just kept going, and eventually over time, we got up until 2015. I was studying sports science over here in Bloemfontein, and I was in my final year. And the place he was currently training at, where he was receiving his sports science and SNC services, there were not really good vibes there, so he decided to leave there mid-March of 2015. And he asked me as his friend, because we became friends over time because we were training partners the years preceding that. And he just asked me, listen, dude, can you do my SNC for me? And let's see how far we go. And for me, it was just a nonchalant thing, because I was just like, okay, it's just Wayde. I mean, it's not, it's nothing to me, maybe to someone else. But at the time, he was Commonwealth silver medalist from the previous year. Yeah. So literally mid-March, we picked it up, started there and then, and we got going. And that's literally how it started. literally just asking me a text message, asking me, listen, can you do this? And I'm like, okay, why not? Let's try.
So when you look at him as a sprinter, not to say that he's unimpressive, but you see, because this is the thing that entertains me. In England, the EIS always hold up Harry AA and be like, oh my God, look at this guy. Like, oh, he's yoked. He, power cleans 170. It's like, yeah, he runs like 10-1 and he's not improved in 10 years. And then you see the American sprinters, same model to an extent. But then you see someone like Wayde Van Niekerk, who, like you said, he can run sub 10, sub 20, and he's, on the edge of breaking into 42 seconds in the 400. Physically, he doesn't really fit that model. So is that fair to say? And how does it affect his outputs in the gym?
I think he's physically, when you look at him, he's an outlier. It looks like he doesn't fit, absolutely. But if you look at the outputs, if you look at in terms of his bar velocities, and you look at the loads that he's lifting in the gym, you're looking at the power outputs, he's right up there. He's punching above with the guys that actually look the part, but he doesn't really look the part. But I think if we go back to the very beginning, he's just wired to sprint. If we can all agree here to say that that's just a guy who's gifted to be able to sprint. You just need to give him the tools to, really take advantage of what he can do. And he will show you if he really channels into what he needs to do, put up freaking 100 kilograms on the bar and let him power clean that, and he'll do that. I mean, you'd look like he can't do it, but it happens. He does it. So I think the physical didn't really confirm what he could actually do, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. I do remember back in the day, Jonathan Edwards, when he broke the world record, the rumor was that he could snatch more than the 200-meter record holder in Britain, John Regis.
Yeah.
Apparently he used to put up some absolutely crazy numbers. You see that with Greg Rutherford as well. Apparently he could power clean like 140, 150.
You see what I mean? I mean, sometimes you don't have to look the part to actually do the job. You know what I'm saying? So it's, again, an outlier that you say, okay, I probably couldn't do that, but watch him in the gym, it happens.
So when you take a talent like that, starting out in the gym, what do you do? Is it they do the same as everyone else, just a lot better? Or is it...
Okay, obviously starting out, I mean, does the same as everyone else. But I mean, as we progress, he catches on really quickly. So his learning curve is really nice. So he catches on to things really quickly, he picks it up really quickly, and his gains just keep happening and happening and happening. You just need to manage him in such a way that the niggles don't become overbearing. I'm not saying that there's no niggles, but so that they become overbearing, that he can't actually do the task that he's meant to do, and that's to run really fast.
What kind of niggles? Is it like tendonitis, hamstrings, or?
And hamstrings, we had backs. I think it all stemmed from his lumbar-pelvic control that he had back then. So that's been something, a work in process, just tune that, get that going right, and make sure that he's aware. And he became very aware of it as time went by. He would become very responsible and know exactly when he knows, okay, something's not right. So he's very easy to teach, and a pleasure to teach as well. Yeah.
Here's one for you. Like, one theory that I have is that sometimes a lack of lumbar-pelvic control, even though it can increase the risk of pain or injury, it might actually be a performance strategy as well. Because certainly in rugby, there were two guys that I was around that kicked the ball an absolute mile. One was Elliot Daly, and the other was Marcelo Bosch. And if you look at the anterior pelvic tilt that these guys have, like when they backswing, and then the posterior tilt that they get on the way through, I always wondered if that was a thing like with Usain Bolt as well, where you see this guy's posture and it's like this. Do you think that's a thing?
No, it's definitely a thing. I don't look at people and say there's a specific model to say that you need to be in these positions. Sometimes it helps for you to be in those bad positions because, like you said, you get that nice backswing and then the brilliant follow through. It just adds to that. So it's definitely a thing. There's a place for that thing of I wouldn't say lack of control, but that abnormal behavior of that we deem as abnormal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So give me a breakdown of like typical training week, say like, did he do indoor season?
No, there was no indoor season. So during the indoor season, we would normally have in South Africa called the summer series over December. And then that would obviously cross over into the new year, January, and then meetings will stop and then it'll start up again from Feb. So it's summer series, November, December, break for end of or mid to end December. January, get back, there's no meets there. And then from February, meets start building up. So you get those low-key meets and you start building up to national champs in April. So that was our summer season in the country. So that's why, as a South African, you always have to either double peak or triple peak.
Okay, so let's say like off season. What does training look like for a sprinter at that level in the off season?
Oh man, lots of mileage. 400. If you're speaking 400 directly, what was happening is that a lot of mileage happened. Accumulation weight. So back then I didn't know the 1/20 concept or method. So I would follow sort of like a step loading. So you'd start at like 1 or 2/20 reps, and then we would go up to 3:15, 3/15, and then we just step load throughout for about 6 weeks. So we just wave load. So up 3 weeks, down 1 week, up 3 weeks again, and so forth, just until we've got a good base. On the track would be a lot of mileage. Back then, there was no speed during the off season. So it's literally just, yeah. It was literally just mileage on mileage and mileage. That was about it for the off season. So now we're talking about July. Or if we were talking about the elite level, he was start in September, October, and that's what it would look like around that time.
Are those, so it's like, over distance, mileage, what kind of distance per interval? Are you doing like 800s, 600s?
So for example, on one day, he would have to do maybe 3 700s on the road. Then the next day would go repeat 3 200s. So 3 sets of 3 200s right after one another. But I mean, obviously at incremental pace, would look at things like 500s on the track, into 400s, into I would say typically would average about 3,000 to 4,000 meters, touching 4,000 meters not per session, but per long session. The rest of the time it would be basically just recovery runs or run throughs or whatever is deemed low for the day.
Yeah. Do you I mean, clearly that's sufficient training to be the fastest 400-meter runner of all time.
Yeah.
Do you think like sometimes the program picks the athlete? Do you know what I mean? Where you just get that perfect fit? Because I remember I had a lunch with Stuart McMillan, and we were talking about, Charlie Francis high, low, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, dude, Usain Bolt apparently for one of his world record, one of his world championship runs, he did 3 high days a week. One of them was 5 sets of 10 50-meter sled sprints. So what's that? 1,500 meters of sled sprints. Another day was 3 300s. And another day he would go for like a 5K jog.
Yeah.
Incredible.
You're really right. Yeah.
How do you, so you mentioned his coach, Ans.
Yeah.
Is it that she's got her way of doing things and that it was just a perfect match between those two? Or were there athletes within the group where it would be, a bit more of this for this athlete, a bit more of this for this athlete, and so on?
If I'm going to be honest with you, in the group, I think I would say 2 or 3 more athletes benefited from that. And what I also saw is one other athlete that was great before regressed. So it makes me agree with you to say that sometimes the program picks the athlete. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that I witnessed, it's something that I think about to this day as well. And if I were to go back in time with knowing what I know now, I wouldn't 100% agree with what the program entailed. But who am I to say that because it produced world record? You know what I mean? So, like you said, sometimes the program picks the athlete. But at the same time, you still need to manage that athlete through that program. That it's just not going to happen miraculously. There's a lot of work that goes behind that.
So let's say now you get to the summer outdoor season. how does training transition then, like your role? Presumably frequency goes down, volume goes down, intensity goes up.
Yeah. So my role in the early season, so off-season, preseason, up until let's say April, end of national champs, I would go from having 4 to 5 sessions a week. That's how he preferred it. He preferred sometimes five S&C sessions a week. And we tapered it down to about 3 sessions per week at the very end. So obviously my intensity went up, like I said, volume went down, and I followed the block periodization method from the start. So I always had the accumulation, the transmutation, the realization that was always ever present, just in different time spans. So early season, we would have long accumulation of maybe 6 weeks. Then we transitioned to maybe a 4-week transmutation, a 3-week taper, a realization period. That would be for South African season from about January. We move into Europe, and I move more into shorter, still block periodization, but just shorter blocks. So I would know that I need to plan for a July peak, or not a July peak, or just a build up to July, a bit of a drop off, and I shoot up into August or late August when the championships normally happen. So that was my thinking.
Yeah, well, it's straight steal from the Soviets. Like, you know, the bigger the base of GPP, the shorter the next base of GPP needs to be for like that double peak, triple peak. What about the track? How does the track workouts change? So
the track from April, you must realize that a lot of because the group was massive, you must understand, it was a massive group. Think of a university, a college group of a lot of sprinters. So you've got different levels in there. So you need to cater to everybody in that group. So what would happen is that obviously the program would be more based on what he needs, but also to cater for the other ones that need to peak in April or need to have a sharper peak in April because they need to make it past that stage. He would follow that, obviously, but the intensities are not the same for him. When we move into the European season, so that's post-May, a lot more foster sessions are present in the program. So you would have 3 to 4 high days in the week. I mean, back then, he was training 6 days straight on the track. 6 days straight. That only changed in 2017 or 16, I believe, where it became 5 with a rest day in the middle of the week. But the rest of the time, it was 6 days straight. So sometimes you'd have 3 or 4 high days in the week, and it was just how it was. So speed would happen after every maybe longer type of session or after a rest day, you know?
Yeah. So is he doing like axle day, a day of like flies or gear changes, then have like a longer day? Or
yeah, it wasn't that complex as you and I know it, but I mean, basically what it was a lot of fly runs, maybe some over speed runs, lots of really quick 200s, really quick 150s, a lot of speed endurance work. I mean, not a lot of pure speed work was done, I must say, but the speed endurance was really top. Yeah, not a lot of pure speed. I mean, blocks would happen maybe, again, or accelerations would happen maybe once or twice a week, or maybe for a short while before a speed endurance session, but it would not be ever present. It would be like there are periods where it's there and then it disappears completely. There's no elements of it. You will not be able to find trace elements of it. But
it's quite interesting because, you know, he ran like a 9.9 something in the 100. And is it, would you say like you have to be in that kind of like high 11s to low 12s meters per second V max to be able to achieve those kind of times? And he's sitting at that without like true speed work. Yeah. So would you say like that's the God-given talent, and then his training was to stretch that out to be able to hold it for as long as possible for a 400?
Yeah, I mean, he's wired to sprint, you're right. It was just God-given. But at the same time, I also believe before he got to Danny Ants, he had decent speed education, if I could put it like, with his previous coaches, you know. So I think they probably laid the foundation to say, listen, this is how you apply yourself. And like I said to you before, he catches on to things very quickly and he gets the hang of it and really runs with it. So like we know, speed is a concept that you just have to do it right. Mechanically, you have to do it right, and you have to know how to apply yourself to do the speed. And I think he knew that before he got there. So what was missing maybe from his arsenal of weapons was that you just needed to know how to hold that speed for longer, or you said to be in position to hold that speed for longer, and it's proven time and time again. 300 world record, 400-meter world record. The speed is there, and the speed endurance was added just on top of that, and beautiful things happen. I think the breaking the 10-second barrier in the 100 was just more of a mental thing. I think that happened in 2016 March, the year of the world record. I think once that mental barrier was just broken through, it just became sky's the limit.
To what extent do you feel like it's belief? Because I feel like when your athletes perform the best, you can look back at it and say, well, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong. But there was zero doubt and 100% belief, and everything was feeling good. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Belief is the biggest thing you've got. If you've got one person doubting you, or one person in your circle doubting you, or doubting the process, it becomes, it adds that doubt that you don't want. You have to have a believing system, but obviously everything needs to be in line as well. But belief is a big part of it. It's a very big mental game, this thing. Yeah.
Do you adopt quite an agile approach when you get into that kind of like early summer season and then the European season? So are you having those daily conversations with sport coaches to adjust up and down? And or is it more done with the athlete?
No, absolutely. I'll first consult with the athlete before I hear what the coach has to say, because you kind of already know what the coach wants, but you never really know what the athlete wants. So I always tend to ask, okay, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? I remember before Wayde went sub 10, he told me he wants to go sub 10, at least now in South Africa, before he goes over. So I said, you know what? Let me hear at least my part of my work to support that. I remember the back where I work now, you guys should know the force treadmills, the Woodway force treadmills. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that man loved that thing. He wanted to be on that thing every single week. He believed that it made him faster. And I was like, you know what, let me write up programs for this thing, because he believes it makes him faster. And it's basically sled work on a treadmill, really. That's what it is. And just program that, and that it made him believe that it's quicker. So obviously I did a lot of consulting with the athlete before the coach, even though I knew what the coach was about to do, and that carries over to every other sport I do. Like even with the cricket that I'm involved in, I tend to get the feel of the players first, because I know exactly what the coach wants. He actually doesn't really care about my shit, It's more about what he's gonna do and what he needs to do. He wants to do stuff, and then I can add on top of that. So that's okay. I can deal with that. I want to know what you want. What do you want to improve on? Where do you feel like you're lacking? What makes you feel good?
I was going to bring that up, especially with like team sports, how huge belief is. And for us, like, scientists or science inclined people and hardworking, you just sometimes want to control and divide everything into sets and reps and programming and tapering and stuff. And you sort of like want to neglect and believe, maybe because it's hard to contain or shape. But if I look back and whatever I did wrong or right, and, processes that were successful, the belief was definitely there. And it came out of like, just the feel and the everyday and the relationships. And, it multiplies when it's a team. It's so hard to, people use the expression where planets align, because it's basically that sort of like, random sort of push. It could happen. That's why it feels like a miracle when it happens for team achievements. Because I'm thinking really, what do you think? Like really good coaches or leaders can sort of like channel that, shape that, or,
Absolutely. If I look back to this cricket season right now that we're in, actually, when we're doing the T20 with my franchise team, we started the season with a different kind of belief. You must remember, this is a franchise that hadn't won anything for the past 10 years. It was shambles. It was toxic. And here's his coach, Alan Donald, comes in and he's like, you know what, guys, we need to have a standard. This is the standard. If you're not part of the standard, you get out. And that's where the belief kind of started. He got buy-in from us as a staff first. Us as a staff, we had to go down into the ground, obviously influence the players. And obviously I have my own way of getting my buy-in and influencing belief. There were things, first round of the T20 knockout, we made it through pretty easily. Got to the knockouts, we should have been knocked out in the semi-final, and the rain saved us. that could have easily put us down. The next day we had to play the final, and it was kind of a thing of, guys, we're here by God's grace, but we've kept the standard, and let's just uphold this and get through the line. And we won the tournament. You know what I mean? So it was something that I didn't expect to happen. Deep inside. After that semi-final, I was like, yeah, we should have been punished here, but it happens. It happens. I mean, the belief was there, and it was infectious. Stayed. It just climbed and was very potent. I loved it. It was my first team environment experience, and I really enjoyed it. It's addictive. You know what I mean? It's different to track. It's different. You know?
Yeah, sounds a lot. Oh, sorry.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, like, when you go from such an individualistic or group of individuals endeavor like track and field, and then you go to team sports, presumably just because of the logistics and all the you don't have the bandwidth. What are the things that you find yourself having to compromise on more and water down more? But then at the same time, what are those things that you absolutely won't negotiate on in the approach between the two domains?
Definitely trimming all the fat from my programming. I realized when I got into a team domain that a lot of my programming prior to that was full of just things that didn't have to be done, So I had to almost compromise, but it's a lesson learned. So I love that. It taught me something new. And you asked what did I enjoy?
No. So you trim the fat, but then at the same time, what's something that you absolutely won't negotiate on that you're going to do regardless that you're in those two environments?
Oh, okay. In South Africa, in every other sport except rugby, they have this culture of physical prep, and S&C needs to fall away as the season progresses. And I was like, I'm not having this, guys. Before I got on board, I was like, guys, this is how I would prefer to work, and can we just respect each other's opinions? Just can we have our own approaches and just respect that? Because the moment that piece starts falling away, little things start creeping up, and then the synergy disappears, and I realized that, and I said, you know what, I'm not negotiating this. We need to have at least weekly sessions when we have to have them. Don't let it be that session that can be cancelled at any point, Yeah.
Is there a quota system in South African cricket as well as rugby?
Yeah. So you have to have a certain amount of players of color in your team, basically. So it has to be a player of color for a player of color. You cannot swap a white for a black type of thing. You know what I mean?
Okay. So how does that affect things politically? Because obviously South Africa's got a storied history, and I'm sure you feel it, everywhere in society. Does it affect the work environment? Because I know that in speaking about rugby, South African rugby, that was a period of change. Because if I'm right, it was 50% of the team have to be non-white, and the same with the staff. And then it was 50% black, 50% or 25% of color, and so on. It's like those changes can obviously affect how everyone feels.
Yeah. In the beginning, it was obviously met with resistance. Now, I remember back then when it was a big thing, quota. And it was a big thing, and it caused a lot of places to restructure in different ways. Some guys did it the right way, some guys did it in a sleazy way, but it just affects the general flow, because imagine you've got your union and you have to now restructure your staff or restructure your team based on certain things. Sometimes, let's say in cricket, you have an injury crisis, or maybe two of your players of colors are injured, but you cannot replace them with a player that's not a player of color. You know what I mean? So it has to be like for like type of thing. So in the workplace, it's tough, man. But I think we getting it right in terms of quota, because I remember in the netball, in our franchise netball league, they introduced a different kind of quota. So the quota is based on where your province is. So if your province is predominantly black, there has to be a quota of white players coming into the team. You know what I'm saying? Same vice versa. I like what they did with the netball there. I think that should be implemented in province by province. The quota needs to be a province-specific thing, because in Free State, it's predominantly white. So you need to have a bit more black inside there. You know what I mean? KZN, KwaZulu-Natal, it's a bit different. you need to have a bit more white in, you know? So it's like that, you know?
How old are you now?
I'm 28.
Oh, okay, so is it apartheid would have ended before you were born?
Yeah, I was basically done. Officially ended in 94. I came the year before, but it was officially on paper.
So, I mean, even through your childhood and becoming an adult and growing up, have you felt changes in society?
I can definitely say, if you look in retrospect, yeah, when you're a kid and you think about your interactions of when you were a kid, and you think, geez, that was actually quite racist, you know? The places I was in, that was not nice of that guy. That was quite racist, you know? But it's always retrospective thinking for me. Obviously now when I fear racism and I see it, I know it. And I know what's changed, especially in Bloemfontein here. I know when there's racial tension. I know when there isn't racial tension. But I can definitely say that I cannot say as a child I remember, or when I was a child I remember X, Y, and Z happening, and I felt at that time oppressed, you know, honestly speaking. But when you think retrospectively, you're like, no, but that wasn't right. I mean, I used to swim. I was a swimmer, believe it or not. And in South Africa, you do not find black swimmers. You don't. It got to a point where in the club I was swimming at, the first one I was at, I was the only black guy. The second one I was at, I was one of only 2 black people. So do you know what I mean? At the time, it doesn't bother you as much, but you could still feel the uncomfortability because now you're getting a bit older and you start to realize what these things mean. And then when I look back, I was like, geez, how did I survive in that kind of environment? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
One of those.
I think it's one of those things as well, like having spoken, because obviously the racial history in the US as well. At the time, you might look at things and say, oh, there's been no progress. But then when you zoom out and look at the passage of time, you're like, well, actually, that's pretty big. The thing that blew my mind coming to Virginia, the first black guy to ever go to the University of Richmond is only in his 70s now. It's absolutely nuts. Yeah. And I think interracial marriage was legalized in the 60s in Virginia. And you think, it's pretty crazy, but it's like you need the benefit of hindsight and the ability to zoom out to see the change. It's just like those changes, I guess, really feel like super slow and glacial at the time, but then, you know, they add up over time.
Well, it's non-sport related, but watch any shows that date like over 8 or 10 years. And even the funny ones, you just be like, wow, what's that joke? It's just maybe a stereotype of someone like faking an accent and stuff. They'll be like, that wouldn't work today. Like, watch Friends, like the first 5 episodes, and you'll be like, no.
It reminds me of a comedian we used to have, or still have, Leon Schuster. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the name. He used to dress up as a black person and play pranks. He used to play pranks on black people back then when the racial tension was high. When people look back on it now, it was a massive thing. You removed him off, I would say, the South Africa's Netflix, Showmax. They removed him off that, and it became such a big thing because we look back on those tapes and realized, that's not a good idea today. But, you know, it's how it is. It's how it is. You realize late.
So I'm completely going to flip it now and, track and field.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I remember, this is like years and years and years ago. I was reading an article on T Nation. I think it might have been written by Charlie Francis.
Okay.
But one of the things he's like, if you look at when Kenya, Jamaica, and I think it was another country, when they first kind of like popped on the radar of international track and field, it lines up almost perfectly with the manufacture of Diana Ball. And I was going to ask you start to see in recent years the prominence of Kenyan athletics in sports that aren't distance. So in the sprints, in the throws and stuff like that.
In rugby?
Yeah. Do you reckon there's a drug element there, or what else do you attribute to that sudden explosion? Because I believe there were a few athletes in Kenya that got popped, right?
Yeah. You know, I think everywhere in the world you get athletes who get popped for something, you know. But I think for them, Kenya specifically, I think it was just them exploring the actual sport of track and field and doing other events and saying that, okay, we could be successful in that, because there are big guys in Kenya.
That javelin is huge.
Yeah, they are units in Kenya. So why can't they play rugby? You know, why can't they sprint? Why can't they throw? I think it's just a thing of get the right person in there to just give them the stuff. Because I can tell you now, in Africa, we are very starved of information and knowledge and everything. I mean, if I think to myself, a lot of the stuff that I consume is not local. You get what I'm saying? I have the privilege to get on the internet and, you know, speak to people like you. I have the privilege to do that. And even people who have my job title in South Africa right now, they still don't have that intuition to say, let me dig there and start mining over there, over the seas up north. Let me start mining them, bring some shit back, you know? So I think in Kenya, someone decided, okay, I'm going to jump in there and start innovating. I know there's a mate of mine, Jeffrey Kimani. He used to do the Kenya Sevens. He
another track guy, right?
Yeah, track guy as well. He does track, you know. I mean, it's guys like that who take information from outside, just bring it back to the homeland, and you just let the people eat, let the people know this kind of stuff. I mean, I see this every day. I mean, I'm coaching an athlete right now. I'm one-on-one. I'm sprint coaching actually. So I'm throwing myself in, you know, the realm of Charlie Francis. I'm a fan of his. But I realize every day at the track I coach, there's kids there that can naturally, I promise you, they naturally just know how to get themselves in the right positions and run. They just don't know the information. They're not coached well. They're not, or the people around them don't know what to give them, you know. It's sad, man. It makes me feel like we've got such a long way to go over here. But I do see certain areas of the country trying to really bring that stuff up and, you know, really give to the people, really make it modernize everything. You know what I'm saying?
What is it then that you think? Because my experience has always been that you go to different parts of the world and they're good at different things. So I always kind of say like that kind of like European and Scandinavian exercise physiology, the sports science and monitoring in Australasia, strength and power in North America, all that kind of stuff. What is it that, you know, Africa and South Africa in specific, what is their strong suit that they're giving to the world?
You would know size, strength and power, you know. It's honestly the raw stuff. I don't think we're quite there yet with physiology. Maybe in some sports like your cycling, you know, there's a couple of guys in Cape Town, you know, who know a thing or two, a couple of guys in Victoria who know a thing or two on, let's say, monitoring, you know. But I think if we look at the facts, strength and power, I think, is the main thing that's hammered on. Because, I mean, you go into a lot of the top rugby schools and they're just pushing strength and power, strength and power. That's what they do. So I think if you look at that, that's our strong suit. And I think we've got really clever people here. I mean, in terms of people who can really think critically, but they're just not in the right places. So someone who would think right in sports science is not doing sports science because they couldn't get the job in there, you know, things like that. So I think clever people, but at the moment, the strength and power is shining above everything.
Dude, the amount of meetings I used to have about, you know, in Japan about, oh, why we're not doing this, why we're not doing that. It used to frigging kill me.
Yeah. What's Japan's like strong suit though? What do they really excel at? I would guess it's like research.
Japan, I mean, they have not that we ever felt it in Japanese rugby, because, you know, the thing about Japanese rugby was that I arrived just after the 16 World Cup. And at that time, Franz Bosch had been a consultant for Japanese rugby through Eddie Jones and, you know, John Pryor and so on. So there was a huge adoption of that within Japanese rugby and baseball, because obviously I think Paul was his face from the baseball ranch. That was in Japanese rugby. But then if you look at the research, they have the Nagahara research group in Kyushu, I want to say, on the South Island. So that's like I want to say they have one of the longest force platform tracks in the world at that research institute. But rugby in Japan, I won't say it's professional. I say it's highly paid. Yeah.
No,
it's a little bit different. I feel like track and field. One of the things that I always found interesting with track and field in Japan is how consistently high their relay teams do without having any real true sub 10 guys. Or if they do have sub 10 guys, they're normally mixed. But they're consistently pretty good. So I think that's like, it's exciting to see where they're going to go with that. And I feel like baseball, basketball to an extent, they're more ready to adopt research. But then again, it's the Japanese culture. The Japanese culture, to me, hurts their ability to compete in high output sports because they work themselves to death. So I think if you look historically, they've always been more successful wrestling, judo, endurance events, marathon, all that kind of stuff, specifically because they're not only can you get away with it, it might actually help. So,
they feel like they're developing, like, one of those countries that are developing on the brink of some massive sports exposure. I've had the feels about them for the past, let's say, 5 years or so.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, definitely the rugby is going in the right direction, but again, it's one of those cultural things where if you look at the most successful, prominent individuals within Japanese rugby, they're either transplants that get given passports or they're mixed. They've been raised outside of Japan and they come in. So I'm excited to see where they go with like that true homegrown players in the future. But like Eddie Jones, mixed, raised outside of Japan. Michael Leach came there as a teenager, already an awesome rugby player. Then you get James Moore, the current captain. I forget his name. He's a South African guy. But it's working. It's working. It's just about how sustainable is it?
I think that is the trend now, because I'm seeing that with what do they call that? The US rugby, Major League Rugby. It gives me those vibes where they bring South Africans, whether they were half decent or really good, they bring them in just to start the culture up, and eventually maybe the homegrown talent, in 15s at least, in the 15s, eventually the homegrown talent starts to creep through, and they can create their own system with their own natives.
Well, there was stats the other day about all the tier 1 teams and how many foreigners or foreign grown players they have. I think Japan was the one with most foreigners in. South Africa was the one with the most exports. So South Africans playing for like Scotland, Japan, Ireland, and whatnot. And South Africa and Argentina, the only 2 teams with full squads with homegrown players.
That's great.
Now that the beast is he's left, because he was born in Zimbabwe, I think. Yeah. But I remember, was it the 19 World Cup? Argentina were the only team with 100% homegrown. It's very interesting. Yeah. And then I think Nkarawera was the only guy that was not like South African born in South Africa.
Yeah, we can't afford any foreigners.
Bro, if you look at their passports, they're all Italian anyway.
Is it?
Yeah, I know.
Cool, right.
That's interesting. Jeez.
Well, a perfect time to wind it up. Where can people find you online, brother?
Instagram, Twitter, at O'B Sprints. I'm still working on getting my work out there. I feel like I was still in quite a learning phase for the past 2 years, really. Like, I was really going into it. I think working with Wayde put me on a work trip that I had to really work, be present, and not really, have the confidence to put my stuff out. But I think now that I've had time to sit back, reflect, do other things, really get into, just learning everything properly and knowing, okay, this is what really happened. This is what I was trying to do, just what I was trying to implement. I think I'm going to start putting out more stuff, more content, Like I said, at O'B Sprints on Instagram and Twitter. That's where I'm at. You guys can hit me up there. Welcome to DM me anything. I'm very friendly. I will not chase you out the DMs. And that's where you can get me, man. I'm in and around. You find me laughing on Twitter, find me laughing on Instagram. I'm an easy guy. Don't think of too much scientific jargon when you look at me. You can never catch.
I love it, brother. Awesome, man. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me on.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.